How do you want to start us off?
Um, yeah, well,
We can play the game.
yeah, play the game. I mean, just hop right into this, right? I'm the creative director. I did creative direction, programming, producing, and a little bit of design. Um, and then Jorge, if you want to introduce yourself too.
Yeah, I'm Jorge. I did a bunch of the programming, the music, and a bunch of sound stuff, or sound implementation. As we had Jory do our sound effects, but that was the bulk of my work, programming and music.
And my name is Nico, and I was the lead designer and 3D animator for them.
Yeah, this is a like a 10-week project. So we're all students, studying in association with UCSC, and I basically pitched this getting it January, and we've been kind of building it since then. When I first pitched the game, I made the pitch. Let's see, I think I made the pitch in near the end of December. I think we had like a week and a half before school starts, so I think it was probably just after Christmas. And I took inspiration from a couple different games: Resident Evil, Inscription, Buckshot Roulette. And the idea behind it was just to create kind of a nuanced version of that game. Horror is like a pretty popular genre on Steam, so I wanted to add in some horror elements. Because we had the goal, or I had the goal, to put it on Steam. I pitched the game itself. I don't think I pitched any of the room stuff, like all the.
No, not at all. I remember when you pitched to me, it was basically just card rush and roulette. You know, it's this essential gameplay here where you're going back and forth with someone, and you have the the penalty of chopping off your finger, like that if you pull a death card. And
and even then, it didn't have the Joker card, did it?
No, it didn't. That was something that was added, I think, like in 2/3 of the way during development, when we had actually a bit of an issue with player agency. You know, people saying it was really, really luck based, and we tried dialing the cards down, and it called for a bit of a town hall between some of the all the devs and whatnot. And we figured out that the addition of the Joker card, it was a wild card that allowed an interesting gameplay mechanic, being able to if you know what your cards are, you can choose your own and save yourself, get rid of all the death cards, or if you're unlucky and you go wrong, you lose a finger in the process. And I'm pretty sure I recall that we even added the death card count as well to help with players.
We did at the same meeting.
Yeah, pretty much. One of the things that we talked about is that originally we were doing people will definitely card count. They'll definitely figure out how the probabilities of cards, but ultimately that was just way too many numbers for people to figure out. And we were able to cut that down by simply telling, hey, this is the amount of risk that's currently on the board, and then letting the player make of that what they will.
I know because when we first started development, Nico, you did a bunch of paper prototyping, and I know the results we got from that was a little different because people would be counting a lot more effectively in that, whereas this is I didn't notice anyone card counting when we were playtesting for the month and a half we playtested rigorously. It was interesting, but in terms of the pitch, to wrap that up, it was just the game itself. I sent it over to Nico first, actually. Nico, you cooked up some stuff, and then
I remember you messaging me over December over break.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, I got this idea. How does it sound? I'm like, this sounds really cool.
We hadn't,
we went back and forth
together yet. Yeah.
No.
Submitted it. We got a bunch of people interested, and then we made the team from there. 11-person team, and we kind of just hit the ground running. We learned a couple new production stuff. And that was about it. I mean, we got to programming pretty quick too, right, Jorge? We got a build out with the card game relatively fast and the game board scene, right?
Yeah, we got that out pretty quickly, and because the base game itself, like the original idea was like pretty straightforward. We were just like, it's a card game where you're, selecting cards and whatnot.
I mean, even looking at like I've like pulled up our old builds when I was like doing portfolio work. It's crazy to see the progression. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty well. I think in our folder we have like 14 prototypes.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, the first like 3 have like the zombie that we took from the Unity asset store.
Oh yeah,
I remember that. All the stand-ins.
Yeah, it's funny. But we cooked up the structure for the game pretty quick, and then you cooked up the items, Nico, and eventually I mean, I would say like we started getting more of the environment stuff done, like what you see behind the monster much later though. Like
it was like three-quarters of the way in, I remember.
Yeah. So although we had a lot of the fundamental like programming and design stuff in, I don't think we had those in because it was just so much to do.
Yeah, there were like various artists just like submitting assets like throughout the weeks, as things went on, and then at the end kind of compiling everything together.
Yeah, I remember you pitched that you wanted to have items as like part of the pitch, and one of the things that you talked about was like, how do we introduce this to the player? And I think me and you like went back and forth, and I said like, well, why don't we have the player move around like a map of sorts? That's when I drew like on basically like MS Paint. It's like a small drawing of so you have like different rooms to choose from, and then you might find an item, you might find nothing. Worse, you might find another patient. Even before patients, we called them monsters because we didn't really have the narrative stuff wasn't really a focus. But what do you think kind of paved the way for that? Do you think
paved the way for the items?
Well, yeah, what encouraged you to want to add items?
Well, I was looking at like a little bit of what Resident Evil did first with the finger chopping in the basic game, and I was like, the basic game's like a mini game,
Yeah, it's like blackjack you play, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think it's fun, but if we want to put like a game out there, I think we need a bit more content. So I started looking at the other stuff. Arcshot Roulette does items. Yeah, they have like 5 items. Okay, yeah, I was like, that's kind of cool. I think if we were to do our game, we would need some more items. I really didn't I didn't have any items planned because Nico, you made them all.
Yeah, no, I had a lot of fun. I think I created over 12 items. 10 of them made it into the final game. The Joker card was repurposed. We're actually gonna have that be a separate item. It was the missing one from the deck, but I'm so happy we actually included it on the actual deck itself, and it kind of limited the scope of items. I think 10 is a very nice number that we kept for sure.
Yeah, but that's basically the history of the items. We wanted to try and keep them I think originally we were going to try and keep them to be more in tune with the world, because some of them don't really make sense for being in the hospital,
Yeah.
But eventually we were just like, whatever. But I think also at that time we hadn't fully cemented a narrative, whereas further along we got that narrative down thanks to our lead artist and their roommate.
The other thing was how the items were going to work themselves. That was a whole other ordeal that we had to meet about. Was were they going to be consumable? Was it just going to be unlockables? Was it going to be how are they actually collect them? And then that's where the shop came about. That's where the item room came about. Just the whole system of the items, I remember it took us a pretty good while to just sort out how exactly they were going to work.
Because it was how are we going to store them? I completely forgot about all that. What does the inventory look like? Wait, when did we cook up the store idea?
Because originally the game board, remember the game board room was literally only going to be the game board room. Like there was gonna be nothing else in there, but then we needed somewhere to store the items, and then that's when we added the cabinet, and then we needed somewhere to teach the player like what's going on, and that's where we included the chronograph.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the shop, even the shop was one of the ideas that floated around was like we were gonna have like a little essentially like a little loot box, remember, where you would like turn in some fingers,
right?
And it would give you a random item.
Yeah, that's right. Oh my gosh, forgot about that. Because like even the item choice thing, like the item tile itself was quite different because you would just randomly get an item instead of choosing between two random ones.
Yeah, true. Because even then, back then, it wasn't even a room. It was like you would land on the space, and it would just be like, "Oh, now you have this item."
Oh, here we go. Here's the shop. How many fingers do you have right now?
About 7 now. 7? I had 10.
That's not bad.
I'm buy all of that actually.
Yeah, might as well.
Yeah.
Just buy them all.
Remember how we had, we had an idea about like an exchange box, which is essentially what became the shop, just because we wanted more player, agency. Because before we didn't have like, fingers as something you can collect. Yeah, as something that you can collect. Yeah, it'll be fixed. But, one of the things that we had an issue with is that people would like get into fights and they would absolutely dread it. There was no reward for, winning, apart from just not starting over again. So, one of the decisions was to like, hey, you're chopping your fingers off. Why don't you have the ability to use them as currency? It's a very gross, but it was very in world, very thematically it made sense within the game.
Yeah, I feel like real quick we should touch on the narrative because we mentioned it a couple times here. When I pitched the game, I didn't have a narrative. Partly because I think I'd create more catered towards the player's experience in a game than for like a old building, and I do that later. But we eventually thought of the narrative of like this whole hospital theme, and you're a patient in an experiment, and it's a limb regrowth program. And kind of for that matter, it's how we came across, like how we cooked up the name Limb from Limb, if I remember correctly, because came up with the narrative. Max's roommate, Max is our lead artist. Their roommate helped a little bit, and we ended up with kind of like a good setting and a good idea of why the player's here that we don't necessarily have to tell. That's unlucky. Well, we cooked up the story, even though it's not a massive part of the game. And I've noticed this, I don't know if you guys have seen this a little bit, people are confused by the ending of our game, which I found really funny.
I mean, we could have, we definitely could have done some, like almost like a game win screen or a credit screen.
Maybe,
because they'd step on it and they'd be like, "Oh, what happened?" And it's totally understandable. It's but one of the things that we noticed is that we saw one guy on YouTube. He got the exit tile, and he's like, "Why was I kicked back to the main menu?" He goes back in, and he's like, "Oh, well, I'll just explore the rest of the board," and then he gets back on the green tile, thinking like, that's the exit, and it's like, yeah, that is the exit, but unfortunately, you triggered it already. It's not going to let you step on it again.
Yeah.
Again,
I think diving into a little bit about the confusion, I think a large part of why some areas of this game aren't more clear, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here, Jorge, but I think it's because one of our big design goals was to make an immersive environment. And to do that, we wanted to eliminate UI. So like the only UI you see that's in like, it's like a button, is the camera buttons in the game board space, I'm pretty sure. Aside from all the TV buttons, right? And I think because of that, we ended up really making it like so difficult to tell the player things, because we didn't want to just slap text on the screen.
Yeah, it was one of the design choices that, we felt it was more diegetic, more in-world, therefore more immersive.
Yeah. So these environments are beautiful.
Oh yeah, shout out to the artists. My goodness, they really outdid themselves with this.
Yeah.
Remember when like we didn't have like the room, it was just an empty void, and the moment we added the rooms, everyone who play tested our game, they were like, "Oh my god, the environments look so great." Well, yeah, with the programming, I mean, you guys spent a lot of time, adding all the items, finding bugs. What were some of the challenges that you encountered during this process?
Some of them. um, yeah, no, I mean, for the most part, it was because the effects of the items are fairly straightforward, but the difficulty comes in like incorporating them into this larger system of the card game. Because even the card game itself is pretty basic at its core, but then you have to take into account like the animations and of the players and the monster, and then the animations for the items and like their sound effects, and so you have to like really account for all those things when you're creating this kind of, I guess it would be kind of like a state machine for the actual game, keeping track of the turns and keeping track of the amount of cards at all times and whatnot. So the difficulty was really just putting everything together was the main challenge, and making sure that if you touch one thing, the other thing doesn't break, was what we would face pretty often.
That's surreal.
Yeah.
What was the hardest thing you think that you made, Jorge? I'm curious about this because for us, Jorge did a lot of the systems, and I'm not as good as a programmer as he is, so I kind of mostly did a lot of side small things to help out as much as I could. But what was like the most, I don't know, what challenged you the most in terms of the structure for programming?
The most challenging bit was probably well, okay, I have two answers. The first answer is like a specific mechanic. The most challenging was probably doing like the keeping track of the animations, like when they're finished, when they're started, just to make sure that the player can't, like, for example, interact with an item during an animation or something like that. That was a challenge just because I had never done that before. But in terms of overall, just the general, what was the most challenging part of it was the some of the asset implementation, especially for the monster and the player animations. I think we spent several days just figuring out why animations were not working, why certain textures didn't look right, and even the player hand model. I think we didn't even really completely fix that until like a week before launch.
Yeah,
which is pretty wild. Because that hand was messed up for like a cool 4 or 5 weeks, just because we like didn't like, we were just too focused on other things. But that was probably the most challenging. Is just the way things would constantly change, especially with the systems. Because I know early on the card game was pretty basic. Like we didn't even have the Joker system. We didn't have the card counting on the EKG screen on the right. And as things were added on, it just came down to altering the systems in their current state to fit those new things that we were adding. There's new features that we were adding into the game, and just like continuously adding on and making sure that whatever we add on doesn't break the current system that we already have. That was pretty challenging, but I think it was a pretty good experience, because then now I'm more experienced in that and know like what to keep track of and whatnot.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, what killed me was camera. Like that one weekend, I spent like 16 hours trying to do the camera in the game board room, and then ended up ditching it for the rest of the quarter until you figured it out at the end of the quarter. But what was something that challenged you in design maybe for this?
Yeah, so like in design, like one of the things that was pretty tough was just trying to like balance out all the items, because originally we had 12. Not all of them made it into the game, but even like some of the core ones, a lot of it had to do with a lot of playtesting. I figured out what was the most sought after, which the players really like, and we took this data, and especially for the shop, we make sure that there's more beneficial items in the shop. The items that players ended up wanting, that sought after more, to appear in the shop, rather than, you know, lesser items that were not so much, you know, not widely used. And this came down to, you know, lots of, you know, spreadsheets, you know, tracking numbers, and this was all something that the team understood, and it allowed us to prioritize certain items over others in terms of, like, you know, models, and, you know, if we need to change up things for balancing, that's how we went about that. If you know, again, like for the actual for the board itself, one of the things that was pretty tough about the board was, like, you know, trying to convey, like, you know, do we want it smaller, do we want it bigger to the team? Because before we wanted it to be 6x6.
Right.
Remember, it used to be 6x6,
yeah.
and we were, like, really concerned that it was very, you know, it was too short. Like, people would, like, you know, find the exit immediately, and it's like, you know, it's gonna blow if that's the case. So we expanded it to 8x8, which I think was a much better choice.
Even the phonograph was going to be different, because the phonograph was like originally just going to play music, and then we're like, well, we could put our tutorials on there. I think, yeah, you not toast here?
No, I have a severed hand that I can use.
Oh,
do you want to talk about the jack-in-box? I'm so... Oh my god.
happy accidents. This Joker, this little jack-in-the-box, it's, for whatever reason, the head part of the rig was just not cooperating at all. So that is how it would just pop out headless. So we called it a happy accident. Just because you would expect, you know, a jack-in-the-box, the head to pop out, but then it's headless. That really just came about by accident.
Yeah,
you want to talk about the animation, Nico?
Yeah, I mean, I promise you, I got all the armature, I got all of the meshes, and to work. And at Expert, I saw it in Unity, I saw it in the animation player. It just was not trying. I just did not want to show. But if you look at the description of the jack-in-the-box, a box containing an unsurprising surprise. Well, the surprise is that there's no head. There's no head in the box.
I love that.
Oh boy.
There's a bunch of small little things like that I think we just ended up. You know, at the end of the day, it's a 10-week project. It's a student project.
Yeah.
So we're all learning. You know, we're not all game masters yet. So.
It's great. I love it.
I also want to discuss a little bit about, like, I want to give a lot of the credit of this game is also to, like, the world and the art, because I mean, as you look around, like, show the wings for a little bit. Yeah. So there's 3 different wings that the player sees here, and they're all modeled by our team and then implemented into Unity, and then prefabbed into these kind of like wings with a bunch of HDRP lighting on it. And our lead artist did most of the implementation. It looks so great, and I really think it pulled together a lot of the atmosphere, because our narration was going to be shown mostly through, like, the world space, and it ties a little bit more into, like, our diegetic themes about not having, like, UI and whatnot. And I mean, it just looks stunning. I, like, look at it every time, I'm like, whoa. Especially for a student project.
Yeah.
Like, look at that TV, man. It's so good.
And you can see, like, the fractals, like, reflecting off of the like that normal map.
These are all the credits. If people want to know specific names of us, we do have a LinkedIn. We have a couple of the socials. If you're watching this on YouTube, I think they're linked. They should be linked on the main thing. We will be having a bug fix out by the end of this week, which is the 1st of April, and that is it should be out by the end of the week, and it should fix all the major stuff. Yeah. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about?
I would just, thank all, like, the people who play tested our game. We had, like, hundreds and hundreds of play testers. I think even, like, we opened it up to, like, online as well. Might even have been, like, 1,000 or so. Like, but
it might be. Well, I mean, let's see, like, what, from our class, from the club. Yeah, I think it was probably
online. Yeah,
400, 500 people at least.
Yeah, and then if you include all the physical playtesting Nico did,
Oh yeah, I
True.
even held the physical playtesting as well. It
True.
was like with all the mock-ups and demos. But yeah,
Wow,
no,
yeah.
very much a huge thanks to playtesters. Again, those are the classmates. Yeah, even our professor, friends and family who got to see all the iterations of our game, and and how immensely that has propelled this game forward. And of course, we're very thankful, like all the the various people who taking the time to play our game, and put it out on social media, on YouTube, Insta, TikTok, all that. It's all great. It means the world for us.
Yeah, it does.
To see it so welcomed.
Also, shout out to, I mean, we've kind of done it throughout, but shout out to all the people who like aren't on this call, that like
Yeah,
are on the team.
of course. The entirety of
on there.
Studio.
It's crazy.
Sure.
A lot of work went into this.
We thank you. Yeah, thank you for tuning in to this little devlog, and we'll be sure to clean up some of the bugs. That way, everyone can have a smoother experience, quality life features. And once again, thank you so much. Take care.